Rolling down the boulevard in the speedable Corvette, like a tail on a tornado ring to promise soaked in sweat. One hand on the glass pipe, the other on the wheel. Devil riding shotgun, singing, boy, let's make a deal.
This is Groundless, a Justified podcast. This is a podcast where we watch every episode of Justified and then come on here and talk about it. I'm Chris. That man is Randy.
You know, I'm not going to say that this series was the worst out of all of the seven seasons of Justified.
Yeah.
I can't say that, but maybe we'll talk about that later.
Boy, oh boy. I will say, you know, it is an interesting sort of question to pose to yourself as you're watching this. Like, oh, is season 5 worse than this one? Or is this one, it's, you know, worse than season 5? And the answer I came up with is that it's different. It's different than season 5. It's not necessarily better or worse, but it's close. So yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how this seats in with the other seasons of Justified. And then we'll talk about that last 10 minutes and what that might mean and how we felt about that. I don't know. Do we want to talk about that first? I feel like maybe we want to talk about that first.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about that first. All right. So we get the resolution of the story. And we'll talk about how we get there and the various things that happens. But the last 10 minutes we get Raylan essentially, you know, retires. He gets offered the chief job in Miami. He declines and quits. We see Willa and Winona, and then Willa and Raylan are out on the what's going to be the rest of Raylan's life, right? Which is retired on a boat, on a seized boat that he borrowed from the Marshal Service, with Willa just chilling out there, and the phone goes off. And we see a little flash to Kentucky, and one Boyd Crowder walking through prison with his Bible. And essentially, what happens is he's in cahoots with a prison guard, a female prison guard, who's in love with him, and conspires to escape. He's in a transport to go to a hospital to have some sort of diagnosis done. He's been playing possum of some sort, or maybe he really is sick. Who knows? You know what the truth is there. Yeah. And you know, there's a little, you know, scene where he makes a racket in the back of the transport, and then they manage to escape together, which is wild, right? I mean, there's two prison guards driving this transport, and there's a few things that kind of stuck out to me about this, but the long and short of it is that Boyd Crowder escapes from prison with the help of a prison guard, who, by the way, that woman who played the prison guard happens to be married to Dave Andron, who's the showrunner for Justified City Primeval. Lovely woman, by the way, also. Married.
She had the she took off the uniform.
Oh yeah,
it was like the say goodbye to these moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, whoa, where are you hiding those under that prison guard outfit? So so Boyd's on the loose. We think, right? I mean, there's a little bit of a suggestion that maybe it's Raylan's imagination, because it flashes back to him and he's got his eyes closed and he might have been dozing off a little bit, seeing that, you know, play out. Yeah. But we do get the confirmation from the cell phone and the phone ringing from the Kentucky Marshal's office, calling Raylan to help. So I knew that there was something that was going to happen because the episode was so short. The content of the episode was so short. I was like, well, it can't be over yet. There's got to be more to this. And I was trying to figure out what that was going to be. And then we got this. So what did you think? What did you think when you saw all that?
It's a great thing for fan service, as far as the because we really, there was nothing really referring to Raylan's time in Kentucky at all.
Nope.
This whole season. So that was fun. It was entertaining. I think it's not really. I would consider it like an extended Easter egg, really.
Yeah.
It's because it's kind of like not that. It's more like an add-on, really.
Yeah.
The way I see it. So it was fun and everything else, and it kind of gives you the whole it opens up for season 2 possibly, but I don't know. I considering the tone of the whole City Primeval season, almost I wouldn't say it's out of place, but yeah, I wouldn't say it connects as closely to this season as you would have hoped, or I would have hoped.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was I mean, I obviously, of course, the moment that the words Kentucky flashed on the screen and you saw a prison uniform with a Bible in his hand, I'm like, oh shit, it's Boyd. Right. I mean, I knew that was what was going to happen. And so I was excited because, we saw our old friends again. It's very exciting. And like you said, fan service, it's cool to kind of do that. And then I was immediately annoyed. And I was immediately annoyed for 2 reasons, right? So the first reason that I was immediately annoyed was that I was like, okay, those 10 minutes were really cool. And it's like the producers decided to say, hey, we could have made this show, but we decided to make 7.5 episodes of that other show instead. How do you like that, fans? It's sort of like, we've talked about CinemaSins on this podcast before, and they do the everything wrong with. And what they do, and when somebody does something like this, they're always like, oh, the movie decided to show us 5 minutes of an inarguably better movie that we could have seen instead. And that's sort of what it feels like. It's like, oh, here's 10 minutes of what would have been a much better TV show or movie for that matter for you to watch.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that kind of annoyed me. But the second thing that annoyed me is that I didn't realize quite how passionately I was going to feel about altering the ending to Justified, right? Because the ending felt so perfect. And we haven't even gotten to that on the podcast yet. So we won't talk too much about it, but the ending, we talked about it on the post-credit podcast when they had us on, that the ending of the show just felt so perfect that now doing this sort of almost feels like you're betraying that ending that the show had. And that also annoyed me a little bit when I was thinking about it. Now, all of that said, am I down for what I'd like to see, the version of this that I'd like to see, which is essentially a 2-hour Fugitive style movie where Raylan is chasing Boyd and his prison guard girlfriend? Yeah, I do want to see that.
Would you have to search every hen house, outhouse?
Exactly.
In a 50-mile radius.
Yeah. I mean, I want the Fugitive 3 with Boyd and Raylan. That's, I think, not too much to ask here.
It would be U.S. Marshals, really, because there was that one with when he was trying to capture Wesley Snipes.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. I
extended.
called that the Fugitive too, but it's actually called U.S. Marshals. You're right. It is.
Yeah.
It's basically the same movie again.
Yeah.
And so, so that's what I want. And that's what I hope they can give us here. I think what we're going to end up with is probably another eight episodes or so. And I worry a little bit about that. I worry a little bit about another 8 episodes with that kind of self-contained story. I wonder how good that's going to be. But
with Boyd?
With Boyd, yeah. That's what I suspect is going to happen.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I think you're right. I mean, just the way it did end, it had a lot of finality to it, but just like the Silence of the Lambs, they always have to put that little teaser in.
Yeah, I know.
At the end where...
I'm meeting an old friend for dinner.
Yeah.
I wondered why now, right? Was part of my analysis too. As I was watching this, I was like, okay, we're 15 years removed.
Yeah.
Why break out now of all times? Why, you know, right when Raylan retires, why does it have to be then? Why wasn't it sooner? Why isn't it later?
Yeah.
What is it that's driving you breaking out of jail now?
Yeah.
And I was starting to, because, you know, what do we know about Boyd? We know that Boyd's not going to do something like this without a plan in place. He knows he's going to need money. And so he's got to have some way to get money. He's got to have something cooked up for him to get money. He's not just going to go to Mexico and live like a pauper. So
Because all the Mexicans there.
Right,
That's why he
exactly.
hated it.
I've been to Mexico, Boyd. I don't think you'd like it very much. It's full of Mexicans. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see kind of what ends up happening there. But I was a little puzzled by Boyd's motivation. In my own head, I sort of made up this like backstory of, you know, Boyd, for whatever reason, they're able to do a genetic, like a 23andMe style test in the prison or whatever. He's able to do that. And, you know, Ava's kid had one in school they did as an activity. And you know, Boyd found out that there's this random kid of his that he's related to somewhere that goes by a different name or whatever because of a 23andMe DNA test or something. That's sort of, and then he's like, okay, now I've got to get out of prison and go find that kid.
And go find my kid.
Yeah. Yeah, that was sort of the story I made up in my head.
That would actually be an interesting thing. You just have to wonder how he would have gotten access to that data, you know.
Yeah, and you wonder, you know, like it's not that far of a stretch for me to assume that, you know, hey, look, they would want prisoners to do that so that they can have the DNA records and everything. Like, okay. I mean, that actually makes a little bit of sense when you think about it. So let's have all the prisoners do it. You know, prisoners might, you know, find it fun. You know, they can, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's a few of them who don't know their dads, so they would be able to maybe find their dads.
It's not real.
It's just
that's probably
random
it,
guess,
right?
yeah. I mean, there's certainly an element of that, right? So,
or you could have the whole government conspiracy about pre-crime at this point,
right?
You know, like
you know,
like
let's
the
throw a
genetic
little bit of
lines.
sci-fi in here.
Yeah. You know what my note here about like that whole sequence was when Luis Guzman shows up as the prison guard.
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, you're not going to get me in trouble." I'm just, okay, well,
you wouldn't be here, Luis Guzman, if something important wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was that, remember, he was in Out of Sight also.
Yes,
remember?
Yes,
So,
he was. So just showing up, I love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you like the character or the actors who show up as multiple characters
Absolutely.
in the same universe.
Yep, in the same universe. It's my favorite thing. Yeah. Like the guy who played Ray Cruz, and then the guy who played he played the bartender in Pulp Fiction too. So.
Yep. So so I thought that was like, okay, there's something happening here. But also, you know,
it was a bit of a red flag when you saw Luis Guzman.
But also, you know, like like the episode, basically you just had a 30-minute episode to resolve the whole, you know, Raylan and how Clement Mansell end up in the like, and he basically ends the way the series started with what's his name? In the at the Miami rooftop.
Tommy Bucks. Yep.
Tommy Bucks. Yep.
Essentially the same thing. And you know, interestingly similar to kind of the way the ending plays out in the book. A little bit. And similar to Ray Cruz's story, right? Ray Cruz tells a story about how he had a bottle opener and he shot him anyway. In this case, we know that, I mean, it's obviously a clean shoot from Raylan's standpoint. There's no question about it, right? He had a gun tucked into his belt. He violently broke into someone's house in the middle of the night. That's as clean of a shooting as there's ever going to be, even if he only had a cassette tape in his hand. After having committed multiple murders, right?
Well, he went like Terminator 2 in that police station. If you like, he went to the Albanians. Yeah,
that's what we were talking about. Like, wait, when did Clement Mansell become the Terminator? Because you're absolutely right. I want to talk about that for a minute, right? Because he